Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back. I gotta tell you, I'm excited about today's show because I know I'm going to learn something because we are talking to a world-renowned expert in an area that I am not at all familiar with. So the gentleman we're going to speak to today was referred to me as someone I should definitely get to know, whose work I should learn more about. And I figured, why not let everyone listen into that conversation? We're going to have some fun. We have basically the world leader. I'm sure he'll tell me to calm down if I'm over-exaggerating. But in terms of functional diagnostic nutrition, he's a clinical nutritionist, and his name is Reed Davis. Reed, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Glad to be here.
Reed, just obvious question here. What is functional diagnostic nutrition?
Well, that's a phrase that I coined to describe what I do and what I was doing in a clinic where I acted as a clinical nutritionist, but started developing more and more of the laboratory work that's behind the scenes, looking at underlying causes and conditions. And no one seemed to be doing it quite that way, and I had to call it something. And it truly does work at the functional level versus just treating symptoms. And we do use laboratory work, so we're not diagnosing disease, but we're diagnosing kind of the way you diagnose a car or computer, you know, what's really wrong with it. And then nutrition, because we don't use any drugs or that kind of, you know, no medication. When most of the people practicing FDN who I've taught, they're not physicians, and that's why we call it FDN, or functional diagnostic nutrition.
And so what someone comes in and they want to experience this. So one, what are the types of people that are interested in this? And what type of data are you gathering? And this is a big question. Yeah. And then what are you doing with that data to make your diagnosis, for lack of better terms?
Well, as you know, I'm a teacher. I teach people how to do this. So don't get me started. I can go on for hours. So you got to keep it. It's kind of simple. What we do, when a person comes in with a health complaint, and it really doesn't matter what it is, because, again, we're not physicians who are trying to diagnose and treat a specific condition. We're not trying to label it. We're not trying to give you the medicine or surgery, options and things like that. We want to know what's really wrong. So a person might come in with low thyroid symptoms, for instance. Let's say their hair is thinning out and they have cold extremities. They're gaining a little weight and they're fatigued quite a bit. Well, that might sound like a thyroid problem to some people, and some physician or someone doing that. And so they might actually run a thyroid test and go, oh yeah, look here, your thyroid is low. Your thyroid hormones are low. And so their solution would be, here's your prescription. Now we are wondering, why doesn't that person ask the doctor, well, what's wrong with my thyroid? So that they're not just saying, okay, you like some sheep, you take your prescription, you go to the pharmacist, you get it filled, and you take your thyroid medicine. Well, for how long? Is my thyroid going to get better? So those are the kind of questions that I was asking a long time ago that led me to doing the laboratory work. Well, what is going on in the body? Where are the true dysfunctions? And we work with laboratory testing. To answer your question, what lab? We'll run labs on the hormones, the immune system, digestion, detoxification, mucosal barrier, the intestinal barrier and things like that. So we find out, oh, wow, look at all these opportunities for healing. Again, identifying these healing opportunities is the true nature of getting better, improving health. So that's what we do. And pretty much anyone can do it. And so once we've identified the healing opportunities, you also asked, well, then what do you do? Well, our protocols are not drug-based at all. They are, if you just hold up your hand, you have 5 fingers, you could label them DRESS. Spells dress, and that's diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. So it's really a lifestyle-based approach to here's what you really need to do to improve health. Forget labeling some disease and treating it with medication. That's just not the way our clients want to go. It's not the way we as practitioners want to operate. And so I think it's a better system.
Reed, you made a really important distinction there, which it sounds like a lot of us don't always make. Maybe not so much people listening to this show, but other individuals. And that is, you go into a traditional doctor, you say, I have thyroid problems. They say, okay, because the thyroid problems, you don't actually know that. They're just symptoms. They give you medication, you move on. And you said, well, is my thyroid going to get better? Or am I just going to be on this medication? Like, are you going to give me basically crutches that I can use my entire life? Or are we going to maybe put my leg in a cast so the bone heals and then I can walk around normally? It sounds like you're going after more the put leg in cast such that I don't have to use crutches for the rest of my life approach.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If there's an opportunity there to heal and improve the function of an organ or a system or, group of cells or whatever it might be, then we want to act on that opportunity and use natural remedies and lifestyle. We kind of count on the body having some desire to get better on its own. And it does. It has an innate intelligence here and there. I mean, if you cut yourself in the arm with whatever, it heals. If you keep it clean, it's going to heal. You notice that the skin stitches itself back together and so on. And so there is that innate intelligence, in a sense, in our cells, in our systems and organs and things. And so we play on that, and again, with the laboratory work, we're zeroing in on underlying causes and conditions. I just call them malfunctions. A better term is what I've used too, healing opportunity. And when we focus on that, here you have a person who wants to get better. They don't want to take medication the rest of their life. When they ask their doctor, well, what's wrong with my thyroid or adrenals, or whatever it is, they say, well, we don't know. Just here's your prescription. And I mean, that's a typical answer. I know there's lots of kinds of practitioners out there, but people are tired of just the drugs and surgery, and they are willing to take action. That's kind of our job as the practitioners, to find out who will change and who won't, who will actually do a few things.
Well, and Reed, this approach of at its simplest, correct me if I'm wrong, is gather a massive amount of data about how the person's body's working, and then gather as much data as you can. I'm sure there's tests that would cost millions of dollars that you can't do, but tests that are reasonably priced. You do all of them, and then make decisions based on that data. That approach seems quite why doesn't everybody why wouldn't someone who's trying to take care of another person gather as much data as possible before making any recommendations?
That's a really good question. And the answer in medical world, is that they're not trained to do that. They're trained to diagnose and then treat according to what's called a standard of care, which is largely pharmaceutical. And it's unfortunate that the system works that way, because people are just chasing symptoms then. And I can give you one of the reasons why it's like that is that the science is years ahead of the educational process. So you have professors in medical school teaching what they learned, and so, there's all these guys doing this wonderful research and development of the science, the laboratory work. They're really good, well-intentioned, sincere people that want to help. They want to get to the root cause. They're this whole world of functional medicine and what I've called functional diagnostic nutrition is just wide open. There's things that we just learned 2 weeks ago that 4 weeks ago weren't on the scope, weren't in our radar, so that's kind of, and so for that to get into the education system, the traditional one, and then eventually down to the doctors, is going to take a long time.
So this sounds like it's a pretty cutting edge discipline. So are there journals or organizations that are trying to take this approach and make it more mainstream or more institutionalized, not in a negative way, but possibly so that it could affect more people? Well,
there sure are. I mean, if you just research functional medicine, you're going to come up with all kinds of things. Now, there are physicians who are learning it. It's not just me and the sort of lay practitioner doing this, but we're the grassroots kind of thing. I mean, I've lectured at National Association of Nutrition Professionals. I just had the course that I teach in this approved for professional development credits on a national level for acupuncturists. We've got some states that have approved this for chiropractic credits and things like that. So it's just a long haul. It's just work, man. It's my life's work.
Well, Reed, I appreciate that. Well, and just really quickly, it sounds like what you're doing. So there's a lot of people out there, and again, always correct me if I'm wrong. There's a lot of people out there who, if a person walks into their office and says, I'm having these problems, they will say, based on my knowledge, like their process is based on my knowledge, I think you should eat this, or I think you should sleep like this, or I think you should exercise like this. It sounds like your practice and approach just adds one step, which is I'm going to gather a bunch of data about you. Then I'm going to make those recommendations first.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, when someone calls me up, my phone will ring and I actually answer it. And I say hello, and you know, they start, I got your name from so-and-so or from someplace, I heard you lecture or whatever it is. So it's a referral, you know, and they want to tell me a life story. And I can ask 6 simple questions and decide if I can really help that person or not, and tell them how I work, which is you can hire me to be your health detective, and then I can send you out some test kits. And, you know, I don't need 20 tests done. I need maybe 5 tests done. And I could get by if your budget was really low on a little bit less than that maybe. So if you let me run some saliva, urine, blood, and stool testing, then that's enough data along with the subjective, which is some forms. I have some really neat, well-developed question and answer, you know, forms to fill out. And then you know, when I get the test results back, you know, if you engage me, you hire me, basically, I'll send you the test kits. I get that data, and I get your answers to all these other things, you know, some questionnaires that I have. And then we get together, and now we're cooking with gas. We're not going to chase the symptoms. I'm not going to just say, oh, for your fibromyalgia, you need to take some malic acid and some, you know, up your fish oil and just this sort of allopathic nutrition approach. And, you know, we're going to say, look, here's again, DRESS. It's always a system. It's always a process of eating right and exercising right. Some people need to exercise more, some less. You know, and then getting to bed on time. Sometimes you need to bring in discipline. Sometimes there's other issues going on with the circadian rhythm. That stuff all shows up on the testing. And then stress reduction is huge. Some people suffer from environmental pollutant toxicity. You know, they've got environmental illness. Others have allergies and sensitivities, and you can have parasites, bacteria, funguses, viruses. So there's all this sort of hidden stress. So when I say diet, rest, exercise, people get that. But the stress reduction, that's huge. That's where these labs come in really, really powerfully to say, here's the hidden stressors, here's the hidden malfunctions. And then the DRES and the last S is supplements. Those are very therapeutic. They're I don't own any stock in any supplement company, by the way. I don't have my own brand or label or any of that stuff. But I can recommend things that have over time shown to be very effective to help with whether it's digestion or the mucosal barrier or, balancing hormones or, stimulating the immune system and supporting a person and their organs systems in a way that food alone just can't do. Quality of food just isn't that good anymore. So supplements are a part of the program.
Reed, you've been doing this for many, many years, and you've done this for over 11,000 individuals. So you must, I start to think about the movie The Matrix, where they just look at that screen with all the numbers flowing down it. Like, I can imagine that's kind of, you see the woman in the red dress, you're like, oh, and this number is it. So what kinds of women in red dresses have you found? What I mean by that is, after looking at all of this data, what has surprised you as maybe trends you've seen?
Oh, wow. Huh? That's a really good question. I have to think real quick about that one. I'll say that I started off back in the late 90s. I was actually in environmental law. So I came to this from a position of, scientific, and what realities about people getting real sick and because of, the things in the air, water, food, and whatever. But, and then I went into nutrition. Now, my sort of main group at the time to work with was women over 45. I was working in a chiropractic wellness center. We had numerous types of practitioners there. I worked there for 8 years as a clinical nutritionist, also what you might call a nutritional therapist, so working hand in hand with the chiropractor. So it was mostly women. We say women in red dress. I can think of so many cases very early when I was still learning. And by the way, I'm always learning, still learning. I'm as much a student as I am a teacher, but I had some miraculous cases where a lady, check this story out real quick. Lady comes in, and it was maybe her 5th or 6th visit to see the chiropractor. And I was just kind of walking her back to get a treatment. And I did some body work on most of the patients, and we talked to them about the nutrition and things. So anyway, so I'm taking her back. She's going to get a heat pack and an adjustment. And I could tell something was wrong. Susie, what's going on? You seem really down today. She goes, yeah, I'm really down. And I go, well, why? She goes, because I'm overweight. I'm 40 pounds overweight. I go, well, why are you 40 pounds overweight? She says, well, because I'm on medication, and I've been on it for 2 years, and now I'm 40 pounds overweight, and I'm really getting depressed. And, I told my doctor I'm getting depressed. And he says, well, you either take the medication, which is for the hives, by the way, or you get fat. You're going to take the medication or you're going to get hives. You're going to be fat or you get the hives. Take your pick, be fat or have the hives. And she goes, so that's really depressing. And now he wants to put me on antidepressants.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So what do you think I said to her? I said, did anyone ever try to figure out why you get the hives?
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me kind of like, what? And I go, well, did anyone ever try? And she goes, no. So anyway, I sent her home with the test kit. And again, this is way early on. This is 13, 14 years ago. And we got the results. And it was a food sensitivity test with some environmental, things in there too. And anyway, we got her off a handful of foods. And within 9 days, she quit the medication and did 2 things she hadn't done in 2 years. One was take a hot shower, because even on the medication that gave her the hives. And the other was she exercised to the point of perspiration, which she couldn't do because even on the medication, she still got the hives. So in 9 days, we turned her life around. 3-4 weeks later, she'd lost 13 pounds. Just because it was inflammatory fat. It was the kind of just accumulates when you're on medication. She was on a steroid and inflammatory. And so, the whole story, man, that's how it works. That's something that I'll never forget that.
Reed, it seems like when we tell these stories, when we look back, it seems obvious. This like, well, did anyone ever ask you why you got hives? But I think if we all take a step back in our own lives, we'll see instances of that where we just assume things have to be the way they are. And that's like a step back of like, why? It's like the old story. You go to the doctor and you say, my arm hurts when I raise it. Well, they say, just stop raising it. Well, but no one said, well, why does it hurt when you raise it in the first place?
Yeah, exactly. So, well, people want relief. They generally go to doctors, and that's what they go for. People go to doctors because they have to. I mean, you never heard anyone say, boy, I can't wait to go to the doctor tomorrow. They always say, oh, I have to go to a doctor. I have to take off work to see a doctor. It's like I have to go. And so what we're saying to people now, Jonathan, is, look, you can opt in to this self-care model, taking care of yourself. Learn what it takes. Learn what's really wrong. Work on the underlying causes and conditions. So you can opt into that self-care model now, or you will be forced in to a disease care model later. And so, like, no one has to come and see an FDN, a functional diagnostic nutritionist. So far, I've trained over 1,000 people in 40 different countries. And no one has to see any one of us, but they may have to go see a doctor later if they don't do this, and of course we're in the mix there with the things that they're complaining about. They wouldn't come and see us if they didn't have a complaint. And there isn't anything wrong with a little bit of what we call intelligent allopathy, a little relief care. So if you can help someone out for now, that's okay, as long as it's not, drugs that have bad side effects and weird things. And so if you can do a little palliation, relief care, that's okay, as long as they're, in the whole game of let's look at the underlying causes, conditions, and do what it truly takes. So you don't need that palliative care, the relief care.
Reed, your entire practice and approach is predicated on this extreme customization of lifestyle recommendations, it sounds. So the question I'm about to ask you is going to be a bit oxymoronic, which is, what have you seen to is there anything that's kind of universal, or that like all of your okay, what are those things?
Well, let's start with hydration. No matter what, people need to be well hydrated. You can just drink more water. That's going to make your bile flow. When bile flows, your body's detoxifying better. So you're also, making your blood a little bit thinner. You don't want sticky blood. It's going to carry more oxygen. It's like that. You're going to oxygenate your brain and your organs. So just hydration is really critical. So is elimination. If you need to be going to the bathroom very regularly every day. One lady, this is an old joke among nutritionists and those types, but you ask the lady, so are you drinking lots of water and whatever, and then are you eliminating regularly? And she goes, oh yes, every Tuesday. So it's like, hydration, elimination, and therefore, detoxification is going to be much better. And assimilation, you need really good digestion. It's one thing to lay out a platter, here's the foods that would work well with your type of person. Some people a little more protein, some people a little more carbs, maybe these kind of things. But if you're not breaking it down and absorbing it, well, then it's not going to be working for you. So, that's one of the critical tests we do on everybody, is that idea of, digestion and assimilation of foods. And so, if that's dysfunctional, you're not going to be healthy. So there are lots of universal things like that.
So, and what have you seen in terms of from a nutrition perspective, what have you seen? Because there is lots of controversy, it seems, in the mainstream media about this is good, no, this is bad, no, this is good, no, this is bad. And how much of that is just, well, this is good for this person in this context, and it's bad for this person in this context? How much of it is that?
Well, I think almost all of it's that. I mean, there are foods that are bad for everybody, like, sugar and alcohol, and you could say trans fatty acids, and chemicals in the food, and pesticides and herbicides and all this. So that's bad for everybody. So if you're talking in that context, then yeah, you're pretty accurate. Now everyone's going to have different defenses and mechanisms in place, and so some of those things are going to be harder on one person than on the next. Some people seem to do okay for well on fast food and junk and stuff. It's going to catch up with them sooner or later, depending on the person. And we find a lot of dysfunction just based on those things. But, as to, is there a good food for everybody? Are apples great for every single person on the planet? You'd have to honestly say, well, no. The most frequent common example would be the Eskimos. They don't eat apples. There's no apples up there for them to eat. Their diets consist mostly of fat and protein. And sometimes at certain times of the year, exclusively fat and a little protein. And they do perfectly fine. They have no heart disease. They have no cancer. They have none of this stuff. So the only carbohydrates they get are seasonal. Things come into season, or there's some seaweed and things that, and maybe among that population, there's still some individuality. You can't say every Eskimo has the exact same diet. Some, just metabolically a little bit different. And so they might do better eating more seaweed, versus, but it's not going to vary a lot. Let's say, just for arbitrary numbers, 80% fat and protein and 20% carbs. Well, some are going to do better at 90% protein and fat, so there's going to be some sliding of the scale within each sort of, you could say, racial group, if you want, that actually boils down to genetics and haplotyping and all this very complicated things. But I'll say that in general terms about your question. I mean, that would be my sort of broad answer.
And does that put to rest, in your opinion? Because people will just high carbohydrate diet, low carbohydrate diet, high fat, low fat is the real answer. Whatever makes you feel great and helps you further your goals, like that. It's like one of these, is it too obvious to be true moments? Like if why are we arguing about like it's this way? No, it's that way. Why isn't it just, well, is it helping you or not? Okay, if it is, keep doing it. If it's not, stop.
Yeah, I mean, people are usually sort of selling something, if you will. I mean, I don't want to be cynical about it because I think there's a lot of people there with great intentions and they actually do some scientific research and things. And yet they still sort of, shape something up, some idea up as an answer. And then the more they pursue it and market it and think, it becomes the answer for them, or so and then if you break it down, well, look, there's no one diet right for everyone, right? I mean, you ask the author of any well-known diet book, you could, Atkins isn't around to ask anymore, but there's lots of these kind of huge, very popular diets, and it's because they work for some people. But I mean, Atkins is actually something that I used to try and I read all of his books. I think he's a hero. He definitely stepped out of the box and wasn't afraid to go up against the establishment. And for that reason, I really liked him. But you know what? It's not the right diet for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, you do want to feel good, but I'll give you this is something you could take home with you. How do you know if a diet's right for you? How would you feel when you say you feel good? I'll give you 3 criteria that you can pretty much take to the bank. The number one thing that a meal should do for you, let's say you eat breakfast. If that's the right breakfast for your type, then it should satiate your hunger completely and thoroughly. You should not be hungry. In other words, an hour later, you shouldn't be craving anything. You shouldn't have your blood sugar going way up or way down or anything like that. So it should satiate you. You just call it satiation or satisfaction. You're not hungry. You're not craving. You don't feel like you need to snack. You don't feel like something was missing. And so that's one criteria, satiation. The next one would be energy. Do you have long-lasting, consistent energy? And I'm not talking about you're hyper or, you've got your kind of bubbly buzzing with some fatigue underneath. We've all felt that feeling. You're really tired, but you just drank 2 cups of coffee, so you're okay. Not that kind of a energy at all. It's a solid, I feel great kind of energy. I can, whatever it's vacuum the floor or, do your work or whatever it is, do your exercise or something like that. So that's the next criteria. So we have satiation of hunger, complete and thorough. We have energy, which is deep and solid and consistent for hours usually. And kind of like the more you fill up the tank, the more hours you ought to get out of it up to a point. And the third thing, people leave this out a lot, is a sense of well-being and good mood. You should not feel irritable. You should not feel something's wrong, no anxiety, and those kind of things. So if you use those 3 categories to dictate or determine, at least they're good signs that you're eating right. If you have complete satiation, no cravings, good solid energy for a few hours, and happiness, a sense of well-being, like you're on it. You can think clearly and you're moving forward in a positive way, with a bright outlook on life. So if your meals are doing that for you, I'd say you're eating pretty well.
Reed, that is just an excellent ending point. And I appreciate you giving that gift to not only me, but also the audience, because I really, really like that criteria. And folks, if you want to learn more about Reed Davis, today's guest, you can absolutely do so. There's a bunch of information up at bonesandhormones.com. Again, that's bonesandhormones.com. We have been joined by the awesomely passionate man. You can just kind of tell in his voice, and I love it. Reed Davis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks very much, Jonathan. Anytime, I'm happy to talk to you about anything.
Thank you so much, Reed. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's show as much as I did. And please remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Chat with you soon.